I'm staring at our wedding photo on the nightstand, mascara running down my face for the third night in a row. 10 years. 10 years of marriage thrown away because my husband couldn't handle me wanting to experience life before I turned 40, and it was too late. Now he's probably in bed with his 20-something Korean girlfriend while I'm alone in this empty house, wondering how everything went so wrong. Everyone thinks they know the story. My husband's been telling anyone who'll listen that I'm the villain who wanted an open marriage, who broke his heart, who deserved what I got. But nobody knows what it was really like being married to someone who treated me like I was invisible for years. Nobody knows what drove me to even suggest opening our marriage in the first place. Let me tell you what really happened. David and I met in college when we were both 20. He was my first everything. First kiss, first boyfriend, first lover. I thought that was romantic at the time, like we were soulmates who found each other early. What I didn't realize was that I'd signed up for a lifetime of missionary position twice a month, and conversations about his hobbies while mine went ignored. For 8 years of marriage, I was the perfect wife. I cooked, I cleaned, I supported his career moves, I smiled at his boring work events. I gave up my dreams of traveling because David preferred staying home playing video games. I stopped going out with friends because he'd sulk if I came home after 10 p.m. I became this hollow version of myself, existing just to make his life comfortable. Then I got the job at Morrison Marketing. It was supposed to be just a career move, better pay, better benefits. What I didn't expect was to finally find my tribe. My new coworkers were everything I wasn't. Confident, adventurous, living life on their own terms. Rachel was divorced and traveling the world, posting pictures from Bali and Barcelona. Monica dated whoever she wanted, whenever she wanted, with no apologies. Sarah had just ended an engagement because she realized she deserved better than settling. They were free in a way I'd never been. "Girl, you're 32 and you've never been to a real club?" Monica asked during our first happy hour. "Never had a one-night stand? Never kissed someone just because you wanted to?" I tried to explain that David and I had something special, that being each other's firsts and onlys was romantic. They looked at me with such pity. "Honey," Rachel said gently, "that's not romantic. That's sad. You have no idea what you're missing." They started inviting me out after work. Just drinks at first, then dancing, then these amazing rooftop parties where I felt alive for the first time in years. David hated it, of course. He'd text constantly when I was out, asking when I'd be home, saying he couldn't sleep without me there. Classic manipulation, though I didn't see it at the time. Then James started working at our company, our new marketing director, transferred from the New York office. 6'3", silver fox type, with this confidence that made everyone pay attention when he walked into a room. He wore tailored suits and actually knew about wine and art and all the things David made fun of me for caring about. James noticed me immediately, not in a creepy way, but in a way that made me remember I was a woman, not just David's wife. He'd compliment my presentations, ask my opinion in meetings, actually listen when I talked. Do you know how long it had been since a man actually listened to me? "You're wasted in this role," he told me one day over coffee. "You should be running your own team. I could help you get there." When I told David about the potential promotion, he barely looked up from his game. "That's nice, honey. What's for dinner?" That's when something inside me snapped. Here was James, seeing potential in me, while my own husband couldn't even pretend to care about my career. The girls were right. I was wasting my life. The flirting with James started innocently. Lingering looks in meetings, coffee runs that lasted a little too long. He'd tell me about his travels, his divorce, how he'd learned life was too short to settle for mediocrity. I'd go home to David and his Xbox and feel like I was suffocating. "You deserve someone who appreciates you," James said one evening when we were working late. "Someone who sees how extraordinary you are." I knew he wanted me. I wanted him too. But I was married, and despite everything, I didn't want to be a cheater. That's when Monica suggested something that seemed like the perfect solution. "Why not open your marriage?" she said. Lots of couples do it. It actually makes relationships stronger because you're choosing to be together, not stuck together. The more I thought about it, the more sense it made. David and I could stay married, keep our comfortable life, but also explore what we'd missed by settling down so young. It seemed mature, evolved, modern. I practiced the conversation in my head for weeks. When I finally brought it up to David, I tried to make it sound like it was for both of us. I asked if he ever regretted not having more experiences, if he ever wondered what else was out there. I thought he'd be relieved, maybe even excited. We'd both been so young when we got together. Surely he had curiosities too. The look on his face broke my heart. Not because I'd hurt him, but because I realized he genuinely had never thought about being with anyone else. How boring is that? How can someone be so incurious about life? I explained how opening our marriage could spice things up, bring us closer, help us appreciate each other more. I used all the talking points Monica had given me. I even said he could date other women too, knowing full well he'd never have the confidence to actually do it. "This is about that manager, isn't it?" he asked. "No," I lied. "This is about us growing as people." He fought me on it for weeks, sulking, giving me the silent treatment, trying to guilt me into changing my mind. But I held firm. This was my chance to finally live, to experience passion and adventure before I was too old. Eventually, he caved. I knew he would. David always gave in eventually. The first time I slept with James was everything I'd been missing. He took me to a boutique hotel, ordered champagne, made me feel like a goddess. He did things to me David didn't even know were possible. I finally understood what my friends had been talking about. This was what I'd been missing all these years. "You're incredible," James whispered afterward. "How did that husband of yours not realize what he had?" I started seeing James regularly. Other men too. Why limit myself? A bartender who made me laugh until my sides hurt. A personal trainer who could lift me against a wall. A younger guy from Tinder who called me his sexy cougar, even though I was only 32. Each experience taught me something new about myself, about what I'd been denied all these years. David, predictably, struggled. He went on a few awkward dates that went nowhere. He'd come home looking defeated while I was glowing from my adventures. I felt bad for him, but also frustrated. This was his chance to grow too, and he was wasting it moping around. "Are you okay?" I'd ask, trying to be supportive. "Fine," he'd mutter, going back to his games. I should have noticed when things started changing. When he stopped asking about my dates. When he started going to the gym more, dressing better, smiling at his phone. But I was too caught up in my own awakening to pay attention. Then he met her. Mina, his Korean girlfriend, as he started calling her with this stupid grin on his face. At first I thought it was cute. David finally getting some confidence, going on actual dates instead of awkward coffee meetings. I even gave him tips on what to wear, happy he was finally participating in what I'd suggested. But then it kept going. Week after week, he'd leave for dates with her, coming home later and later. He started learning to cook Korean food, started watching Korean dramas with subtitles, started smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. "She makes me feel like a man," he said one night when I asked about her. "What's that supposed to mean?" I snapped. He just shrugged and went to bed, leaving me fuming. I made him feel like a man for 10 years. I was the one who supported him, who built a home with him, who chose him when I could have had anyone. The turning point came when I saw them together at a restaurant. I was there with James, and across the dining room was David with this tiny little thing who couldn't have been older than 25. She was feeding him bites of her food, laughing at everything he said, looking at him like he hung the moon. The same way I used to look at him before he became so boring. James noticed my distraction. "Isn't that your husband?" "Yeah," I said, forcing a laugh. "Good for him." But it wasn't good. It was wrong. David wasn't supposed to find someone who made him that happy. He was supposed to have a few meaningless flings and come back to me grateful for what we had. That was the whole point. I started coming home earlier, cooking his favorite meals, initiating sex the way he always complained I never did. But he barely noticed. He was too busy texting her, learning Korean on some app, planning their next date. "I thought we could go away this weekend," I suggested one night. "Like old times." "Can't," he said without looking up from his phone. "Mina and I have plans." Mina. Even her name was annoying. So exotic and delicate. Not like boring Jennifer from the suburbs. I tried talking to the girls about it, but they didn't understand. "You wanted this," Rachel reminded me. "You can't be jealous now that he's actually doing it." But I wasn't jealous. I was concerned. David was getting too attached, forgetting that this was supposed to be just physical, just fun. The way he talked about her culture, her perspective on life, her cooking, it was like he was falling in love. That's when I realized I needed to end this experiment. It had served its purpose. I'd had my adventures, experienced what I'd missed, proven to myself that I was still desirable. Now it was time to go back to our real life. "I want to close our marriage," I told him one evening. The look he gave me was one I'd never seen before. Cold, distant, like I was a stranger. "Why?" he asked simply. I poured my heart out, told him how much I loved him, how this whole thing had been a mistake, how I realized he was all I needed. I even cried real tears remembering all our good times together. "What about James?" he asked. "What about all your other boyfriends?" "They meant nothing," I said, which was mostly true. "You're my husband, you're the one I choose." But David just laughed, actually laughed at me. "You chose them for the past year. You chose them over me every single time, and now that I've found someone who actually values me, you want to change the rules again?" "She's using you," I said desperately. "Young Asian women target older American men for green cards and money. Everyone knows that." The disgust on his face made me realize I'd gone too far. "Mina has a master's degree and makes more money than you," he said quietly. "She's with me because she actually likes me, because she thinks I'm interesting and attractive and worth her time. When's the last time you thought any of those things?" I couldn't answer because he was twisting everything. I'd always thought those things. I just also wanted more. Was that so wrong? I quit my job the next day, cut off contact with James and the girls who'd led me astray. I threw myself into saving my marriage, becoming the wife David had always wanted. I cooked elaborate meals, kept the house spotless, wore lingerie to bed. I became a 1950s housewife, thinking that's what would win him back. But it was too late. He'd leave for entire weekends with her, post pictures on social media of their adventures, hiking trips, museum dates, cooking classes, all the things I'd wanted to do that he'd never been interested in before. Suddenly, with her, he was Mr. Adventure. The worst part was how happy he looked. In 10 years of marriage, I'd never seen him smile like that, never seen him so confident, so comfortable in his own skin. She'd changed him in ways I never could, or maybe in ways I'd never bothered to try. Our first therapy session was a disaster. I tried to explain how this had all spiraled out of control, how my toxic coworkers had influenced me, how James had pursued me when I was vulnerable. But the therapist kept asking about my choices, my decisions, my accountability, as if I was the only one who'd done anything wrong. David sat there, calm and distant, talking about Mina like she was some kind of angel. How supportive she was. How she made him feel valued. How she believed in traditional gender roles but also respected him as a person. It was like listening to him describe everything I wasn't. "You need to end things with Mina if you want to save your marriage," the therapist said. "I know," David replied. But the way he said it, I knew he wouldn't. He was just going through the motions, probably at Mina's suggestion. She was probably playing the long game, pretending to be supportive while planning to steal my husband. That was 3 weeks ago. We haven't been back to therapy. David moved into the guest room, then started spending most nights at Mina's apartment. He says he's thinking about what he wants, but I know he's already decided. I see it in the way he looks at me now. Like I'm a mistake he made when he was young and didn't know better. I've begged, pleaded, promised to be different. I've offered to do anything: therapy, church counseling, even those submission workshops some wives take. But he just looks at me with pity. "You killed what we had the moment you suggested opening our marriage," he said last week. "You can't resurrect something you murdered." So dramatic, so final, so unfair. The girls from work reach out sometimes asking if I want to grab drinks, telling me I'm better off without him. But they don't understand. They don't have to go to bed alone at 32, knowing their husband is in love with someone else. They don't have to face starting over when all the good men are taken. They don't have to live with the knowledge that they had everything and threw it away for some meaningless orgasms. James still texts occasionally. He says his door is always open, that I deserve better than a husband who abandoned me for some exotic fantasy. But James isn't marriage material. He's fun, he's exciting, but he's not the kind of man you build a life with. David was that man, and I let him go. Or rather, that little Korean bitch stole him from me, swooping in when our marriage was vulnerable, taking advantage of his confusion and hurt. She probably targeted him specifically. Older married men are easy prey for women like her. Act submissive, cook their ethnic food, boost their ego, and suddenly they think they've found their soulmate. I've done my research on her. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Master's degree from Seoul National University. Marketing director at a tech startup. Volunteers at animal shelters on weekends. Speaks 4 languages. The perfect woman, at least on paper. But I know the truth. Nobody's that perfect. She's hiding something, playing some angle. Women like her always are. Last night, I drove by her apartment building. David's car was in the visitor spot, had been there all weekend. I sat there for an hour, imagining them inside. Was she cooking him dinner in her tiny kitchen? Were they watching those stupid Korean dramas together? Were they in bed, doing things he'd never wanted to do with me? I know what you're thinking. I'm pathetic. The desperate wife who destroyed her own marriage and can't accept the consequences. But you don't understand what it's like to watch your husband fall in love with someone else, to see him become the man you always wanted him to be, just not with you. The house is so quiet now. No Xbox sounds from the living room, no complaints about what's for dinner, no warm body next to me in bed. Just silence and the ghost of what we used to be. I've started looking at apartments, smaller places I can afford on my own once the divorce is finalized. David says I can keep the house, but I don't want it. Too many memories, too many rooms where we used to be happy, before I ruined everything by wanting more. My mom says I'm still young, that I'll find someone else. But she doesn't understand that I don't want someone else. I want my husband back. I want the life we had, boring and predictable as it was. I want to go back to that day when I first suggested opening our marriage and slap myself. But I can't. All I can do is wait for the divorce papers and watch on social media as David builds a new life with her. They're talking about moving in together. 10 years of marriage, and he's replacing me with someone he's known for 6 months. The open marriage was supposed to make us stronger. It was supposed to add excitement to our comfortable life. It was supposed to be just sex, just adventure, just a phase. It wasn't supposed to end with me alone in an empty house while my husband plans a future with someone else. But that's what I got. The adventure I thought I wanted turned into a nightmare I can't wake up from. And the worst part? Everyone thinks I deserve it. Maybe I do. Or maybe David just never really loved me enough to fight for us when things got hard. Maybe he was always looking for an excuse to leave, and I handed him one wrapped in a bow. Either way, I'm the one sleeping alone while he's living his best life with his upgrade. Young, beautiful, exotic, traditional, everything I'm not and never was. She won, I lost, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life. Some adventure this turned out to be.